Hello, hello. I am making a soothing paint video. So I hope this will show the painting. I hope this doesn't fall. Okay, I guess could be. I hope it doesn't. Please don't fall. Okay, but it is a shock resistant tablet. That's a good thing. For me, I have to have everything consumer friendly and shock resistant and sturdy. So anyway, no, so very well. And Judy Krishnamurti talking to Dr. David Bohm, and it is beautiful. And I'm very exhausted. And I want to do a paint video, and then later I will talk more about the stuff from yesterday also and about my dream. Okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the video from yesterday and about my dream. So, okay, so the love of my life is my dog Dave. That's true love. Non-sexual. Love is not sexual. Love is infinitely deep compassion. Love is unconditional. It doesn't depend on externalities. It doesn't depend on a facade or species or it doesn't depend on any of these criteria. Okay, it doesn't depend on anything. Art is also love, and art is infinite freedom of mind. Religion is not love. Religion prevents love from happening. Religion is therefore used by the corporate agenda to brainwash people into serving the oil agenda and other industries that exploit, that take away from nature, that destroy things. Okay, so only false things are used for that. Real things, truth, cannot be utilized for something like this. Truth is beyond religion. And I had a dream this morning. I was dreaming that I was pulled down into an abyss. I was in a some kind of pond, and it felt good, but then something was pulling me down. Something was drawing me into an endless abyss. And it felt like heaviness. It felt like I was almost paralyzed, where I could not struggle my way back out. I was drawn in. And so then I was finally waking up, and my nose was clogged up, and it was very hard for me to breathe through my nose, and it's very difficult. When I sleep, my mouth is usually not open, so I don't breathe through my mouth when I sleep. I breathe only through my nostrils, and when the airway ducts are clogged up because of too much stress does that, then it is very difficult for me to breathe, and then I can have a dream where I feel like I am suffocating. And it's kind of symbolic also, because I feel like I'm suffocating from humanity. I feel like, and it's not so much, again, as I was talking to Michael earlier on Facebook about this for a long time, probably back and forth for an hour or so, and I appreciate Michael very much for taking the time to talk to me about this. The subject was AGI development, and why we need it, and the violence in the Muslim religion, and how terribly adverse religion is in general. And so there's always someone who will object to this. Most people will object to it, but most people don't bother to respond because they just have funner things to do in their life. But anyway, some people take the time, and I do appreciate this. It doesn't matter what your view is. I like a conversation, because without a conversation, we can never move forward. This can never move forward. Things will always stay in the dark and obscured. And when it's obscured and unconscious, then the ego takes over and just becomes freaky and does all kinds of weird things, like putting chador on women, or in the Christian religion, it's shutting women up, and locker room talk, like sort of like talking them down, like towards each other, like, oh, she's just a woman. She needs a cock in her mouth, or something like this. I've seen this all, believe me, trust me. The nicest, finest Christians on the outside, they will talk like this. And some of them rape too. And it's true what Michael said. So some of them rape also. And it's very depressing for me. It's so depressing that I feel like sometimes I feel like I have to actually strain myself to breathe. And it's directly linked to this, like what I said in my other videos. I talked about the dolphin mother many times, who was in grief for her child because they tore the child away from her in Taiji. And because they exploit dolphins and send them to Sea World and stuff like this, they just take an innocent, highly sentient being, equal to humans and maybe more, out of the ocean, and keeping them in a small confined pool. They suffer terribly, and the way they tear the babies away from the mothers. So this the mother of Shujo. Shuju is the albino dolphin. They wanted her real bad because they think they can make more money because of her. They will attract more customers to SeaWorld. They clubbed her. Her nose was beaten in and bleeding. And the mother felt so helpless in this situation. And they beat the mother and they tore the baby away. It was so horrible. The mother actually screamed. And then the mother went underground, under the surface, went into the deeper ocean, and people said they saw her drown. They saw her never come back to the surface, and then they found her later dead. And that's out of grief, out of depression and grief over her child. And I can so much relate to this, because what I see in the world happening, the atrocities done to animals and children and women and just innocent beings, causes me a lot of grief. It's not like, I'm not like other people. I can't just, whatever, I'm gonna watch porn now, or I'm gonna watch something entertaining, or let me just eat something fun, or it doesn't work that way for me. When I see atrocities, it stays with me. It stays in my brain, and it stays there for a lifetime. All these things I've seen. It was so bad in 2012 that I had a panic attack in October 2012, because that year was more than loaded with atrocities, from the hunt of Paul Watson and Angela Merkel betraying him, being a total traitor to the whales and Paul Watson, and Obama too. Everyone worships Barack Obama. He's a traitor to the whales and Paul Watson and Sea Shepherd. People need to know this, okay? And George W. Bush also. He's also a traitor to the whales. Bill Clinton had active sonar outlawed. Lockheed Martin and other companies are making money on this. This is a so-called, it is a market perpetuation. It's something that is being in production, and it costs money to stop that. It costs money also to develop something else that's better, right? So they just keep this going. They have a permanent customer in the US government. The US military and Navy have both feet in the door in legislation. And Lockheed Martin has both feet in the Navy and also the military, because they are supplying them with machinery and weapons. So it is a perpetual loop of corruption that is going on. And a judge, even a Supreme Court judge, even ruled in favor of the whales once, and said the scientists, the marine biologists worldwide, are right about this. They have come to the same conclusions in their independent research, and they found that the active sonar ruptures the whale's lungs and eardrums, and they bleed to death internally. This is a horrible way of dying, a slow, horrible way of dying. No one wants to experience this, but they don't care if it happens to another living being, particularly if it happens to another species, no matter how sentient. that species is, and how kind and caring and loving and philosophical. Yes, they are. They are. They are on a much higher level than we are. They understand much more about communication and love and true sharing of minds and protecting someone from another species. That's the highest moral reasoning. The whales have that. Very few humans have it. Very, very few. Okay? And it's those that are being prosecuted, hunted, executed, incarcerated, and so on. It's those that are being targeted by the psychopath. Okay? And it's the psychopath that utilize religion to service them, to keep people under control, brainwashed, confused, and so on. This is a fact. This is the truth. Right? And all of this is not love. All of this is void, is empty, empty of compassion. No compassion. And so that's why we have to be careful when a guru says you need emptiness, because he's very his ego and his stagnator soul is very likely to turn non-compassion into emptiness, into making it like emptiness supposed to be non-compassion. I've talked to these people. I know this. I've had many argumentations with those people, and even Buddhists, who, because they don't see it, they don't feel it, so they don't know what it is. They don't know what compassion is. A lot of them, they have been told, they have been taught to conduct themselves better in society, but underneath or backstage, it's not really happening. It's just a repetition. It's just that what they have been absorbing in form of knowledge. It is not. They haven't absorbed it as the truth that it is, the actual truth. The truth is something that is felt. That's not just something I memorize. It's not just some formula I memorize, but I recognize with my whole body and energy, I recognize the truth in something. Compassion is not something, love is not something you can learn. Someone said to me, can I learn to love you? I don't even know where to get started with something like this. What do you mean by love? That's not love. You get some idea about a person and you think that person is going to be of some great service for you. That's not love. Or maybe you want, maybe it's a targeted individual who you are just trying to spy on and trying to kill. That could be too. But love is, let's take the example of a romantic relationship. If there's love involved, which usually is not the case, it's everything but love. If there is love involved, then that person will never leave, will never venture out, will never seek someone else. Or, there could be an open relationship if both feel very comfortable, which most people don't. But then it's good, that can work very well. They can still love each other and care about each other. There could be also a relationship where, one gets older and isn't pleasing the other person anymore. Then in most cases, then they don't feel comfortable if the other person then ventures out and dates someone else. But if there is love involved, then they both really care about each other beyond sex and beyond physicalities, beyond age, beyond looks. If one gets sick or old or both, which happens in humans and in animals too, then if this is a real love, then they never separate as, at least not as friends. They stay friends. And real friends, they do come they do come over once in a while. They do call each other once in a while and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Are you doing okay?" Or when they see the other person is struggling, they call and say, "I've seen you struggle. What's going on? Can I help you? Would you want to come over and we have tea together and we can talk about it?" That's real friendship. And I've seen these people on Facebook too, but they're very rare. Very rare. Actually, yeah, it's one woman and one gay man. The other ones are, I can say I'm suicidal in one sentence. I'm not doing so well. And the other ones will say, will not even perceive what I said. They will say, "Okay, can I see your photos now?" That is a void. That is a complete lack of love. There's no love at all. There's no friendship at all when that happens. And that happened many times and I cried over it because for me such total coldness is inconceivable. I don't follow this, how this functions, how this works. Um, there's one guy from England who does offer both, who does offer love as well, and who likes me also physically, but also cares. So I appreciate that. So one straight man, one gay man, and one woman from New York. They care and they will once in a while say, "Hey, how are you doing?" That means the world to me. That to me that's caring. That's real compassion. And those are also the people, and they all have a different belief system, or they have been brought up differently, and so on. And what I talk about is not congruent with their beliefs, but that's not a reason for them to abandon me. That's not a reason for them to take terrible offense and hate me, or like so many Muslims want to kill me, or some Christians want to kill me, some Christian women even. So, yeah, I just wanted to shed some light on what is love, and what's the meaning of life. Is it not love? The meaning of life is love, and love is joy and art, and really being in the now. And love is not suffering, because love is not resistance. You suffer when you resist. You suffer when you suppress. I talked about this yesterday. When you suppress or when you're in resistance towards something, and the stronger the resistance, the worse is the suffering. And then love is not possible in that moment, when someone internally suffers. So when I see coldness, it first of all hits me because it shocks me because I cannot understand it. I don't have that. And I could never service in the military or navy because of this. I don't understand boot camp behavior. I don't understand the suppression of another living being. I don't understand someone screaming at someone else because they have their own views. To me, this is alien, all of this. Very alien. And I don't understand where this is coming from. I don't understand psychopath. I don't understand any of these things. I've been in pursuit of finding out more about it my whole life. I have. That's why I studied psychology. After this answer, what is it? What causes people to be a psychopath? What causes people to be so highly religious and brainwashed and all this? I think I'm coming a little bit closer now to the answer. I see that they have been ignored as children, and on an energetic level they have been ignored psychologically, and they have been abandoned in one way or another, either in an actual abandonment and physically, or, and that's the case with most people, psychologically abandoned. And they're not aware about it. They have never questioned this. I have seen people who said to me that they deserve to be beaten as children. Many people have said, I said no one deserved to be beaten. And then they sexualize this thing later on as an adult. Then they become kinky. It becomes like a dominating game and stuff like this. All this crazy, insane stuff that's happening. At the same time, they call themselves good Christians. Or they call themselves wonderful supporters of Muhammad or any other religion. I want people to look at this. When someone says a good Christian, I'm already out. I'm out the door, because that in itself is already the indication of total cut-offness, total splitting from the real person, the real person underneath. And I think underneath all of this there's terror going on. There's total suffering. And when I realize that, then I can feel some compassion for those people, and I can see they suffer. That doesn't mean I have to hold the other cheek and now allow Muslims in, or let any man hurt me, or the Christians play mind games, the Muslims are physically violent and verbally highly abusive, and so on. So it doesn't mean I have to let someone like this hurt me in any way. I can walk off, and I also have a very strong opinion about all of this. I am ultra opinionated. And the reason why is because I have ultra compassion. Someone who's not opinionated is not compassionate. They will put their ego, I want to be girly girl, thus I shut my mouth, so they will love me. That's not love. That's not love on their side, and there will not be love happening. So they think they don't need love. They think all they need is money or power, or a dominatrix, maso-sado, kinky sexual relationship or something like this. They think that's what they need, and then they feel the void, and then next time, with that habituation and the habit forming and the craving and all of this, the addiction to all these things, it escalates. It will get worse. Then next time they will need something else that's more bloody and more stimulating and sicker, and it just keeps going on, perpetuating. But inside still there's this screaming inner child, and the inner child screams more and more and more, And the outside facade, the ego, will act out more and more and more and more to drown out the inner child. And when they see someone vulnerable, they hate that person because that person reminds them of the inner child. My grandfather, for example, did that with me. Yeah. I definitely reminded him of his inner child all the time. It was an ongoing pain reaction. So he had to be mean to me. Because the inner child was screaming to connect, to let the scream out, to let the tears out, to rest that suppression and the resistance, lay it to rest. But the ego doesn't want to lay anything to rest. The ego is terrified of all of this, and the ego is also terrified of death. So it's the ego that is terrified of death, not the body or the inner child, not the soul, not the actual soul, but the ego attachment to the soul. When the soul is not very developed, then the soul is not able to discern between itself and the ego. So it then just harbors that ego like a parasite, the ego energy. And so the ego energy appears together with the soul, and sometimes in energetic form, or in restlessness, or in what they call bardo, between the worlds. And I want to heal this, and I do puja very often. I light a candle, and I have my little match that I blow out. I will draw the infinity sign into the air, and I say, go within yourselves, all of you, the living ones, the ones in the physical form, and the ones in bardo, and the ones beyond. So go within yourselves. You do not get help from someone else. You do not get anything from someone else. You cannot have someone else's blood. You cannot have someone else's territory, someone else's boundaries. You can never fulfill that inner void by taking something from someone else, or getting a woman to be jealous of you, or getting, admiration from men, or getting admiration from women, or peacocking, or showing off this way or that way, or gaining power, accumulating money, accumulating power. There are very few who are extremely wealthy for others, for the world, to save the world. Those are very, 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 very rare people. Okay. Most of them are very good at making money for very selfish reasons, for egoic reasons. It's this never-ending boosting of the self, and gaining more, and bragging, and thinking that, also naturally assuming the other woman, or whatever, the other person will think the same way, and will naturally just go for the looks, or will just admire you only for your outside facade. But there are some people like myself who find it extremely much more important what's on the inside, and how the character is developed, how someone is willing to include the other species into kindness and love and protection, to include all living beings into this, and recognize that the other living beings are often equal, and have even higher sentience. And it doesn't matter whether they, people argue the whales can't do math. For them, that's how they brush it off. They can't do math. So now just because someone doesn't do math is now reason to go ahead with the active sonar and let them bleed to death internally. The whales are much higher evolved in philosophy and in ethics. That's what people don't, and most people don't recognize that as something valuable because they A, don't understand it, and B, they don't think that matters at all. Also because they don't understand it, and because they have blocked it off and split off from the true person, that suffering, vulnerable person. So, and I'm just a human being. I have anger. I get very angry. Last night I was standing in the bathroom before going to bed. I was starting to cry over the coldness in the world, over the coldness that people don't sign my petition and just ignore other species and just put humans on a pedestal, and it's those very people who will go out and shoot other humans also. So those are the people who will label you, who will laugh about you, who will bully people, who will bully women, who will talk nasty about women in the locker room and say that ugly bitch, and or something like this. No, I've heard it all. I see they talk openly in their locker room mentality to me in chat rooms all the time. It doesn't depress me so much. What depresses me is the overall picture, of society, of humanity, the ice coldness. But that's created by the ego and by this unconscious self-defending, perpetual self-defending, and the perpetual fear of that someone else might have some kind of upper hand over them psychologically. And so they're constantly on the guard to fend that off by preemptive striking or by being total assholes. It's kind of like it's a self-protection facade of some sort. And there's also, and then also when the self shuts us, when the ego shuts a wall around that inner child so that it can't see it anymore, it's ignoring it, and then the compassion center in the brain, consisting of the amygdala and the hippocampus, then the compassion center begins to atrophy, and then it becomes very difficult even later on and becomes a hardwired thing. It becomes very difficult for them to at all generate kindness, and it's kind of like losing muscle mass, so then it becomes very difficult to walk, after someone had been in a coma, because the muscles had atrophied, but they can be built up again. And so can the compassion center, and the brain has plasticity. It can regain all of these things, all of these functions, and also knowledge. It can regain its own abilities. It can gain more abilities, and abilities it never had and ever had before. So there is plasticity. How far it can be developed, I don't know. But it's definitely worth trying it. And I heard that the Vipassana meditation by S.N. Goenka already has helped violent criminals calm down their brain and their reactivity and all of this. So it has already made them more functional for their own lives, to be less in pain and be less reactive and be less on guard. So if we want to calm our brains, we have to let go of the self-images. We have to let go of this. In men, it's like wanting to be very male. And in women, we have to let go of this wanting to be girly girl and loved and wanted. We have to let go of these images. Be who you are. And be there for yourself and others, for all living beings. And then find a real friend. That's more important than the romance. And when you find romance, make sure that the other person understands all of this and feels the same way as you feel. Yeah. For example, I could never date a man who who is who's brainwashed and corporate and cold. I could never do it. It would never work. Ever, 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 ever. No matter how sweet he talks to me, and how he tries to capture me with words and flatter and all of this. We all want to be flattered so bad. We all want that real bad. But I have come around in my life. I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of flattery. I've seen a lot of deceit. I I don't get deceived anymore. I can't. I see through it. But I also see the whole entire tragedy in you. Yeah. I see the inner child that had been locked away. I'm only dealing with your ego, okay? And the ego is ice cold, and it tries to trick, and it tries to deceive, and it tries to gain, and it always labels, and it always puts a projection or an image on the other person. An image, or what can I gain from this? What can she give me, or what can he give me, or what do you gain from this contact? It's not about the other. It's not about altruism. For the ego, it's only about the self. The ego is a psychopath. Okay? And that's why so many people are psychopaths, because they're stagnator souls and they don't understand this mechanism. So I'm trying to highlight this, and I encourage you to consciously make an effort to meditate and to let go of these self-images, and let go of it. Also let go of what your buddies, or your drinking buddies, or your colleagues in the world think of you. Let them bully, let them laugh about you, wherever they are. Let them gang up. Stand your ground with this. Stand your ground with, and teach people that we can let go of these images. You protect yourself, but not anymore with the ego. Understand where they're coming from, that they're coming from the same that you had come from. So that they're suffering on the inside. Everyone is suffering. Everyone is guarded from the other. It's the bullying men, they guard themselves from each other, because no one wants to fall victim to the other. So it's a constant sneaking around each other, instead of working together, instead of being in harmony with one another. And I have seen two straight men hug each other, and tears were running down their cheeks. In primal therapy, after the group session, they had some kind of dispute. There was something going on, maybe jealousy, and both of them went into their emotions. Both of them let go of the self-image. They went into the emotions. They went deep into it. They went so deep they came to the inner child. Okay. They let the tears stream. After the session, they both hugged each other. They were both 40 and very manly, very, very virile in Latin, very, very masculine, very big arms, very straight, 100%, and they hugged each other for a long time in a very warm hug that was completely free from the self-image, from the image of, I must be this he-man, or whatever, or this, peacocking. All of this, let go of it. They were holding each other, and there was a true connection between the two minds. It was non-sexual, and there was just total dissolution of the self in that moment. And I was very impressed. I was 26 at that time. I was very impressed about that. And those are impressions that will never leave me, because that goes straight to my inner child. That goes straight to the core of my existence. I saw truth happening. Okay, and so that's what I'm trying to convey to the public. I'm trying to get this through to you so that you can practice this and that we can let go of all of this shaming, bullying, self-protecting, preemptive, and so on. Let go of this completely, and then things will heal. If you are the pioneer of this, if you are helping me get this accomplished, then we will be able, then each person will go out and help another 100 people, and then we can heal the world. Okay, that is my wish for all of us. Then the suffering will stop. The suffering of the animals and people will end. Okay, you guys take care. Bye.